Second question, on all the units in the construction of the building, will plumbing and or the kinds of utilities that you would need to turn these things into something else be installed during construction, or will it be just without kitchen facilities?
Can you repeat the question? Is it,
yeah.
Is the plumbing provided will be specifically for this assisted living facility? The question is whether other plumbing might be added,
or electrical, or the kinds of things you would have in a kitchen. Will that be put into these units?
Let me have the folks from the development team.
No, I don't. I'll try to speak loud enough. That absolutely not. We don't want to. It's an expensive building to build, and we won't be putting in anything extra like that.
Okay, so nothing there. That's fine.
For our specific purpose.
No, the next question I had was nothing was said about parking in this, and it would seem to me, you know, you can't cover that subject with a traffic study. I mean, parking is all over Southern California the #1 concern every time I read something about zoning going on or construction of a facility. And you really need to get into this much more detail than was done here.
Well, I don't know if Laura mentioned it, but part of their task is to evaluate the parking needs for this.
No, I would like to have what you're proposing, not evaluate. We need to know how many cars, how many sites, is it underground, is it going to be in the lot next door? You know, and in a facility like this, you're going to have a lot of visitors visiting the residents of this particular home.
Right. Bill, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the site plan provides for 45 parking spaces. 43 spaces.
For a 58,000 square foot building?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that's adequate?
Based on our experience, yes.
What is your experience that would tell you that would be adequate for here?
Our experience is that we need about 0.5 parking spaces per suite. And that's after...
And how many suites is that?
150 properties.
How many suites is that?
That would be
There are 75 suites.
75 suites.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman right here.
Well, I was trying to address the car usage, and I guess there may be some ratio that works because you have a lot of people there who may not even have a car. And so I think that is a concern about, you know, the actual car usage department that everybody knows it's a big problem throughout the city, everybody. So they're probably less now, but I think that we would want to explain why maybe, you know, you got 80-year-old people, you don't have 5 cars or something like that. There are other 2 issues, and I assume that they're addressed by the environmental impact report, and that is the water. Because, you know, it's a lot of people, and they're going to use, I don't know what they use for that stuff. And the other is, part of the infrastructure is the sewers and associated issues. There are 75 units, and so I think that, I assume that would be well addressed by the environmental impact report, because those are the 2 main issues, water and infrastructure, i.e. water and sewer.
Absolutely. That is part of the developer's due diligence to evaluate and to find out whether all those utilities are sufficient and the sewer system is sufficient in order to accommodate this project.
Similar to the environmental questions, a couple of other questions on that. Waste, which would be how much trash all these folks are going to go through. Also, lights in the parking lot.
That is
will be on at nighttime. There'll be lights in the buildings that will be on. And to parking, also the staff that work there. So not just the visitors, but the people who will be there day to day to manage this complex. I'm assuming on a tested pattern. So with the trash comes rats, comes raccoons, comes all those things. How that would be
We had a question on the trash. There was concern about the trash pickup and what kind of trash service this property will have. There was concern about the lights on the property in the parking lot and around the building. You know, when those lights will be on and how that might affect the properties. And I'm sorry, there was another problem. Pests.
and parks.
Rats. How those will be controlled when there's a trash enclosure, is that what the question? So, Billy, if you could.
On the trash will be in a contained area in the building. It will be tucked into the building, so it'll be a inside room, well ventilated with doors and things, so that it won't be open to allow pests to come in any more than maybe your garage would. The lighting in the parking lot, which is that's regulated by city code as far as the amount of illumination, and they have baffles or hoods on the light fixtures so that the light doesn't get cast out to the neighboring properties. And then the lights in the suites themselves would be typical of any bedroom light. It would be likely be off, but if it was something that was a nuisance to a neighbor, we can always provide some sort of a blinds or a screen, some sort of a window covering to mitigate any concern that the neighbors would have. And as we've looked at the cross sections in more detail, we don't have them here. We've looked at cross sections in detail. If you stood in the second floor of the building and stood at that window and looked out, and if we had the average person's line of sight, which would be likely lower than mine, but if you looked out, the line of sight would be below the fence that was going to be required across the north side of the property. So they would be looking into the hillside or into the lower part of the fence. The top of it, they wouldn't be able to see over that fence, and that's true of all the properties across the back of our site. Did that answer the questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I need to understand where the 2 stories starts, and I understand that you were speaking to Mr. Cover and something about the final grade. For the layman, can you just tell us how many feet from Sierra Madre Boulevard this will start? And the second question is, when you're done, is it going to cut off the view of the mountains if you stood right across the street? Directly across the street, like the main city hall? Those are the 2 questions I have.
Sure. With regard to height, Gregg mentioned that the building will be lower, the grade will be lowered about 3 to 4 feet. And to give a sense that height, because the elevation right now is a little bit higher right now, so we're going to bring that down lower. That finished grade, which is the lower grade, is where you measure when that building, the vertical of the building hits the finished grade. So it's like look at an L. That's where the height is going to be measured from that datum to upper datum to the highest point of the building. That's where the no more than 30 feet and no more than 2 stories is measured from. Now,
how many feet is that point from the ground?
Sierra Madre Boulevard.
From Sierra Madre Boulevard. That's what I need to know.
that's what you want to do, okay? Because you're right, there's going to be a differential between the street is where the street hits, the road is, and then the grade.
Sorry, I can't. Big question.
If you remember, this was the driveway. At this point, the elevation of the pad where the building sits is going to be very, very close to what the sidewalk is now, only slightly above.
How many feet?
It'll be within 1 or 2 feet. The building pad, where the concrete slab is, will be within a couple of feet of the elevation of the sidewalk.
So the building will be maximum of 32 feet above Sierra Madre Boulevard.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's at this point, Sierra Madre Boulevard slopes down slightly. So as you get to this end, you'll see that the wall is a little taller here. If you stand here now, this wall is about 7 feet high. We're going to lower the site, building pad, so it's ultimately going to be about a 3.5 foot wall. So it's 3.5 feet here above Sierra Madre Boulevard, and up at that driveway, it's about close to a foot and a half above the sidewalk.
So what's the height from that corner to the top of the building?
From this corner or from this?
From the bottom.
Ground.
Where we stand
If this is 3.5, 4 feet, and this would be the ridge.
It's 34 feet.
Ridge, would be 33 and a half to 34 feet. Okay, but the measurement for the 30 feet is from the building pad. And we're lowering that building pad, and our measurement goes down as well.
But it's already high.
Yes.
The existing is,
It's already a high wall. What you're saying is we're bringing the wall down. But really, you should start at the bottom of the street, because that is the whole essence of Measure B, is 30 feet up, because we don't want you to block the mountains. And that's my second question. Will it block the mountains?
no. So again, the way height is measured is from where the building hits the grade, and it's included in the Measure B height. If you look at the Measure B ordinance, it references how you measure height, and so height is measured from where the building hits the grade. I think what you're referring to is that could it be measured from the sidewalk level or maybe the street level with the intent of not increasing that sense of height. Again, Measure B allows one to build from the building pad and measure the 30 feet from that building pad and go up 30 feet. That's the allowable height.
There are no controls over that particular point? I mean, who says that's
how Measure
from
B
the
is.
pad to the top?
The Measure B in the ordinance permits you to build from your building pad and go to no more than 30
That's the
feet.
exact wording in the Measure 5.
If you look at Measure B, that's how height is defined, yes.
What about the mountain?
Now the mountain height, there is nothing that states anything, and I just want to be very clear, that has anything that preserves a mountain view at all.
So what you're saying is it's going to cut off the mountains?
Well, I can tell you from my experience, my office in City Hall looks straight out to the skilled nursing facility building. Right now, the elevation of that skilled nursing facility building is higher than I know that the building is going to, this proposed building lot should go 3 to 4 feet lower. When you double the height, if you were to sit in my office and look out and you double the height of the current skilled nursing facility, it still will not go above the mountain ridge that's behind it. And that's as close as I can explain. So all I would say is that when this building is proposed, it's going to be even lower than that.
Well, that's a rendering right there.
And that's a record. Yeah, but I'm talking about like when I'm directly coming out of my office, looking from across the street, and I look at the current building that's there at 1 story. When you double that, because that's what you would get a sense of is 2 stories. Still, that 2-story building, I can still see the mountain ridge behind.
But I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking about this project.
And exactly what I'm saying is that when you compare the current one and double the height, and you look at this one, which they're in fact lowering the height, then that building will not extend above.
So can we say that this project will not clip the view of the mountains?
It would not from across the street where I'm sitting at my office, no. Right across the street, no.
That's 60 feet away from it.
Now, I have to tell you, if you are standing on the sidewalk right in front of the building, right in front on the north side sidewalk, like where the bus station is, certainly that 2-story building, you probably will not see the ridgeline.
Sure. I'm talking about if you're sitting across the street.
And I'm telling you that if I'm sitting in my office across the street, which I have a view of, it will not. And again, that's my view, my line of sight, because I'm taking the building that exists now and I'm doubling that. And I'm saying, well, if that building doubled, because that building's about 15 feet, the existing building. 16 feet. So if I double that, that's 32 feet. So I just take my line of sight and I put it up higher and I say, well, 32 feet, and I can still see the ridge line
I think
behind
you
me.
said 33 or 34 feet, did you not? Yeah.
Jesus.
I
34.
think what's confusing is this picture is taken on an angle.
So across the
So is
street.
the one over there. There's really no rendering of a finished product with the mountain behind it, where the person can view from across the street. There's no rendering of that.
That's a good point. That's actually something we will take note of, and perhaps the architect can actually.
And I understand that there's nothing in Measure B about the mountains.
Right.
And maybe there is something about 30 feet starting at the, what did you call it?
Right at the building line, as it hits the grade, from that building pad, and you go up, you literally measure from that building pad up to 30 feet.
I think
if you look at Measure B, the ordinance 23013, and review the height language, it refers exactly, that's how you measure
I
height.
think the concern is that maybe the project sort of goes against the spirit of Measure B in that sense. You know, like getting really technical about building pads. Well, there's nothing in Measure B about
We actually thought a little bit just the opposite, because measurements in all jurisdictions for building height are from the site itself. This site does sit up high from the street.
Yes, it does.
It's not cheap to lower that site. And when we looked at it, and looked at fitting it into the community, we said, you know, it would have a very positive impact if we took that height down by 3 or 4 feet. That's not something that you do lightly, because it's very expensive to do that. But in looking at the community and really trying to, you know, if we do end up working and being able to build this, we want to do it in conjunction with the community. We thought that was a good benefit. Everything in the Measure B and all the other regulations measure from the site. So, you know, I think we did try to do that.
I mean, Heather, your point about a straight-on elevation, though, so that you really get a sense of what that building height is, I think that's a very good point, because that will illustrate, you know, quite clearly what that profile of the building will be against the mountain behind it.
If we could see what it would look like from
Right, and that's something that would illustrate it.
that would be great.
Because I'm only telling you what I think I see across the street.
We can have it.
Caroline?
Yes, because the photograph shows mountains in Monrovia and Arcadia, not Sierra Madre.
So we want to see the Sierra Madre. I understand.
And I would like to ask the architect, with respect to the interest in putting craftsman-style architecture there, there is no other craftsman-style architecture along the street of Sierra Madre. What you are replacing is a mid-century, modern, flat-roofed building, which probably would fit with Arnold's Hardware to the west and the church structure to the east, all the way to Thurston Court to the east. So I think that would render less building mass on that site. So that would be something that I would aesthetically point out when I have a chance to deal with the aesthetics issue in the EIR. And I have a question for the environmental consultant. What environmental documents are in print right now for us to look at from the standpoint of your assessment?
None at this point in time.
And yet, you're taking our information tonight to put into your initial environmental assessment.
That is correct. The comments and questions that are brought up tonight will be considered as part of the environmental document.
The initial assessment.
Yes.
Right. And then after you create your initial assessment, you only have 20 days to respond to it.
Once the initial study is completed, there will be a public review period. So once it's complete, and the staff has looked at it and they're comfortable with it, it goes out for a 20-day public review period for comment from the public. Then it comes back so that we can respond to the comments that came up on that document. So you'll have this first opportunity is to say, I am concerned about. Then you review the environmental document to say, has my concern been addressed?
So far, there's nothing in the form of a negative declaration that you've not.
There is no. This technical studies are not completed. We are at the beginning end of these. At the beginning.
Sir?
Do you plan on making this a non-profit venture or still?
Non-profit. The question is it a non-profit venture?
The question is this a non-profit? No, it is a for-profit company. It will be a for-profit.
I've said before, but I think the suggestion talking about Heather's concern is you might put up all these poles and call the story boards that might help you put them in appropriate places so that people can really see what you're talking about. Because that's the suggestion, you put in storyboards to help people foresee what it really is.
We will take note of that, and I know that's been something that the planning commission has it has not been an unusual request. It's been pretty common in the planning commission. Maybe in the black sweater.
Okay, thank you. Well, first I'd like to say thank you for all of you for considering our aging citizens in the community. I think it's great rather than having some sort of mini hall. So thank you for considering that. I have two quick questions. Will the building meet any LEED certifications? Silver certification, I think, in regards to LEED, the environmental.
The question is will the building have any kind of LEED certification? And LEED certification basically it's using building materials that are sensitive to the environment, sustainable building materials. Even the operation of the building, there's a certain accreditation as to what degree you actually have the building built.
Yeah, I'm John with Hill Partnership Architects Office. As far as LEED certification, we're not formally going for LEED certification, but the newly adopted California Green Building Code really puts a lot of those elements in your building anyway. So I think we would probably, even though we're not going to formally ask for that certification, it will be very similar.